You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Weston Williams. All right, in this episode, we go inside the huddle with Matthew Principe, Director of Innovation at Detroit Opera and Director of Live Streams at Boston Baroque, to talk about the Mets. No, not that Met, and no, not the museum either. Anyway, in the 2-minute drill, Opera Roswaf celebrates Mario Schwitzen's birthday. I got lucky. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Stitcher and Spotify. You're going to click follow. On Apple Podcasts, you just hit the plus sign. Send us a voice memo or email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. You'll get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin while supplies last, just for sharing your own hot take. Oliver Camacho, great to see you, as always.
It's great to be seen. A very exciting start to the clay season. The Monte Carlo tournament just began.
The clay.
And Andy Murray already is out in his first match. Poor the
Andy.
Scots. Never known to be that successful in clay. But what's more exciting, I know you have something you want to talk about, Frozen 4. What's more exciting is that in the last episode of Opera Box Score, we had a Matt Cummings stand-in. And wouldn't you know it, we got Matt Cummings himself on this
We've
podcast.
done it.
We have
Finally.
two Matthews on this
You
show.
cracked the code.
We've been trying to get, we've been contacting his agent every week. We finally got him. And here he is with all his hair. I will describe briefly for the listeners, if I may.
Okay, Rapunzel.
Matt has a slightly trimmed beard, just like a little bit of like fuzz, like some of that sexy stubble. And the most Fabio mane you've ever seen.
a lot.
It
I
is
feel like we need to get
glorious.
back onto a video platform just so listeners can appreciate
Yeah.
how much my
I'm kind of mesmerized. Is
how
the thing.
far my hair has come since the lockdown days.
Matt Cummings, it's great to have you here again. So what have you been doing for the last 6 months?
It's only been 2 months, if you can believe
It's only been
it.
2
but
months? Oh,
yeah,
right, okay.
since I think last
It
we
felt
met
like
our
an
heroes.
eternity.
I was well. That's just because I was talking a lot about Martina Arroyo last time I was here, so it probably felt like a long time to you. But I was in 2 big projects in Chicago. One was the premiere of The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing at Chicago Opera Theater, where I was in the offstage/onstage chorus. And then the following weekend, I was in the choir 1 for Chicago Music of the Baroque's St. Matthew Passion with Jane Glover, Dame Jane Gloves. DJ Gloves. I've been trying to make work as a name for her.
DG, joke.
You heard it here first.
Oh my goodness.
So
Like-
Weston and I were in the audience for Alan Turing, and in addition to being in the chorus, you were also an onstage bully. We have to
I
make
did
sure.
get to commit a hate crime for
Just a little
about
hate crime.
45 seconds.
Really?
But the choral bits of that were complicated.
Yeah, it's an interesting show to be in the choir of because a lot of whispering. It's very, very, very rhythmic, and we're kind of ambiance that gets added on top of the pit in a lot of places. Which is an interesting experience to be part of as a part of a big opera because we don't actually know what's going on for 90% of the show because we're just up in our little choral loft, like whispering, homosexual, kill punishment. Yeah, I mean, like, who hasn't? So I'll definitely say that by opening night, it was so welcome to have the energy of an audience back in the room again to make the show feel really fresh and to just have that excitement in the room because I do think that the piece is very cool. What Justine Chen and David Simpatico have put together, like they have been working on this piece for over a decade.
Wow.
I think the music really has legs. It's it has a unique voice and really pretty interesting music. And it's you can take a lot of it in the first time you're listening to it, which I don't always think is a successful part of every new composition that ever comes across my desk.
Yeah.
But to be able to witness this sit in the audience and see something for the first time and have a good idea of what it is that the people are trying to say and what the music is trying to do, and to be able to be swept up in the performances instead of just sitting there like with your pencil like writing out tone rows and trying to figure out what exactly the composer is trying to do. Like this was it was exciting, and it felt like we were part of something that was live and new. And even though we were sort of in that liminal space between being on stage and off stage as the chorus, and I didn't really get a chance to see what the show looked like. You could feel the frisson.
And then just last week, my good call was having heard Gwilym Bowen as the evangelist in the St. Matthew Passion, conducted by S Glove. What'd you call her?
DJ Gloves.
DJ Gloves.
DJ Gloves.
The D is for Dame.
Okay.
Lest we not forget.
So you guys were behind the orchestra, so I don't know if you got the full experience of Gwilym Bowen, but maybe in rehearsal you got to hear what he was like.
Even from behind him, it was an outstanding performance. Everyone in the chorus, professional singers, I'm not going to say that it's a uniformly optimistic crew. Like, there are some people that you encounter when you're doing gigs who have been around the block a couple times and are a little bit jaded, but everyone was just absolutely blown away by what he did vocally, by what he did textually, by what he did dramatically. It was extremely, extremely impressive. And it's a stage that he's sharing with my beloved DJ Gloves. Jane Glover, her passion for the music is incomparable. even someone who is as experienced and as knowledgeable and has been and knows that piece so intimately, like, she gets nervous about doing St. Matthew, like the St. Matthew Passion. It is just a titanic work.
Yeah. It's a heavyweight.
In rehearsals and like every minute up to and through the performances, she's always so proper and so classy, but she brings to that like a real sense of down to earthness. And like, what I love about working with her is that she always seems just as excited and as privileged to be in the room working with us as we definitely feel working with her. And there's a lot more reason for us to feel excited about working with her. Being a musicological and musical legend that she is. And throughout that whole process, just the amount of attention to the character and the affect in the music that she really wanted to bring out and focus on telling the story and not let any kind of fireworks or bombast, though there's plenty of that in the work, get in the way. That was her focus really from the first time she picked up her baton in the room with us to the end of the last concert. And it was just a really artistically powerful and satisfying experience to be a part of as a performer.
Fantastic, man. Well, great to have you back here to talk some opera with us. Let's do it.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Matthew Principe, director of live streams for Boston Baroque, is responsible for the in real-time cutting and directing of the company's simultaneous in-person performances, which have been vital for the post-pandemic recovery of North America's first period instrument orchestra. Since 2020, Boston Baroque's digital audience has grown across 22 countries on 5 continents. Matthew is also the director of innovation at Detroit Opera, and he joins us now from the Big D, Motown. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Hey, George. Good to be here. Thanks so much.
Are you from Detroit originally? Or
no, not at all. I'm from a small town in the Poconos, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. And my family's from New York, and I decided in the pandemic, let's go check out Detroit. I love it. The music here, just the vitality and the culture here. Everybody in this city, you can talk to them about any kind of music. They will have an opinion and be able to talk. It's awesome.
Growing up in Southeast Michigan, I got a little corner of my heart for Motown, for sure. So you wear a lot of hats in a lot of places, and actually we're previewing the Detroit Opera season later in this episode. But what was your introduction to live stream direction?
Well, to live stream direction, to skip everything, I was doing a lot of recording as a kid. And so then, long story short, I wound up in New York City, and I was working at the Metropolitan Opera. And starting there for the radio broadcast, bringing up singers to the radio booth and talking with them, getting them booked for interviews. But then they realized that I could help with the Live in HD series, working during the intermissions on stage with the on-stage interviews. So kind of fun because it really is like, we just finished Act 1. Let's go, instead of to the dugout, we're going off stage or the costume shop or something. So all of those things, and SNY, which is the Gary, Keith, and Ron show for the Mets, New York Mets, they always used to have Steve Gelbs there. And so that's always kind of what I was working on, the producer side of that background stuff. But so having the live streams of the Live in HDs into there. But then I was just really just thinking what we can do. And everybody's got a different aspect on how to bring opera and live performance to audiences, especially during lockdown. But every single time we're especially with Boston Baroque, dealing with 400 years of music, right? We're always changing around different styles.
I mean, you mentioned the Mets, and sportscasting has to be one of the most complicated live editing jobs out there. It's fast paced, unless it's baseball. Although with the play clock now, it's a little faster. There's all these cameras. So, like, what's the prep? What's the day of logistics for you at Boston Baroque for, I guess, what I'm going to call arts casting?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that, we think about the live sports. You don't know what's going to happen. You have a basic premise that hopefully somebody's going to hit a ball and score some runs. At least in opera and music, we have a blueprint. We have the score. So hopefully we're looking at the conductor just to make sure that we're in the right tempo and following them. So for my prep, it really is all about the research and knowing the music. For Boston Baroque, I have the luxury that we're at the GBH Studios, which is a top-notch facility, and with the camera crew there and the production crew, everything is happening. Their response is fantastic. So as you're saying, is if I'm the one that really is the I don't want to say I'm the ball. I'm the one who's prepping them to try to see what angle we've got. But I'm like, okay, I need the bassoons, camera 5, and we'll get the bassoons set up, and then the phrase starts and go.
What is the play-by-play of that like? Like, when you get in, like when the performance starts, you've got the cameras rolling, you've got the audio going. What do you do if like something goes wrong? Even how do you go through a performance like that?
I do have the live performance. Being on stage, I was a singer, and so I definitely have that empathy, but also that musical training of feeling when people are uncomfortable or when our cameras are kind of uncomfortable. Even myself, I do have a score reader who's always in my other ear telling me when the violins are coming in, when the winds, when the horns, when this singer's coming in. So when it gets my whole getting back to all of it is, what is the intent of this broadcast? When I'm doing Boston Baroque, we're the only period instrument, one of the foremost period instrument orchestras in the country. And, it really is about the experience of letting the audience at home on their own screens, really getting them to activate their visual listening as well. So I'm not always going for the most pinpoint spot. It's not just the flute. It's not just the concertmaster. I'm always trying to get some wide shots or flowing shots to make sure they're able, the audience is able to activate their own ears and to say, oh, there's the flute that I was just hearing, and kind of opening that up. So, but
the show that's coming up is an opera, right? So it's the Gluck opera. So is that going to be a kind of a different ball game?
Oh yeah, Iphigenie entre Rides, which is actually a wonderful, wonderful opera by Gluck. We're now dealing with staging, which really is brought.
That's the twist.
Yeah, so that was the fun thing when we did Amadigi di Gaula last season. Yes, it was really fun to what I do is I'll be coming in next week and taking a look at the staging and beyond the music. I'll be taking notes in the score of when there are really important items that are happening, staging aspects, whether this is really a wide shot because the projections are going to change. There is a big blood moon that we're going to be, that's really important to this opera, but also the relationships and making sure that I'm getting the right coverage depending on the staging, that if everybody's right next to each other, we can really do some close-ups and zooms in. But if they're right away from each other, I do need to get that proper coverage and getting that different angle of when we're doing recitatives, who's talking and where that dialogue is.
Yeah, it's such a challenge too. I mean, I don't do too much with video personally, but I've had a bit of experience with the audio portion, and I find it so difficult, especially with opera, to get that, almost as close to a studio sound as possible when you're also struggling with the staging, the background noise. I think of how many like classic opera performances, have only been ever, recorded live, and there's someone clunking around in the background and coughing and doing all this and all that. What do you do to like mitigate those kinds of issues? Maybe if you're doing more of the visuals, maybe that's not quite your wheelhouse, but I'm sure you have to think about those sorts of things when audience and background noise is concerned.
Yeah, I totally understand. But my thing is, you don't mitigate that. This is a live performance. This is, if we want a studio performance, we'll get a studio performance. But this is a live performance. It's something actually, as director of innovation at Detroit Opera, I work on the radio broadcasts, and I've brought in a production crew there, and the mixers. I'm telling them, I want to make this sound like the Detroit Opera House. I don't want a studio recording because I want them to hear what it should feel like if you're sitting in the audience. And that's the same thing that's happening at GBH. And that's, working a lot of times in musical theater and opera and live performance. Every performance is special. That's why regardless if you've got 3 games at Wrigley Field, you might want to go to all 3 because you don't know what's going to happen when the opponents are there. So that's the excitement of it.
So much of a sportscast too is about hearing the crowd, right? Like if you're listening to baseball on the radio, so much of those crowd noises tell you how to feel about what's happening out there in the field of play. Matthew, I want to expand the conversation a little bit into digital media. Before I do, let's do a sideways move to Detroit Opera. So there you are, Director of Innovation. You've talked about one thing that's on your job list there. Unpack the title for us and talk us through some of your other responsibilities at Detroit before we go back to digital.
Sure. It's a lot of buzzwords, but in essence, the Director of Innovation role is digital strategies.
Yeah.
So it is how we present to the public. It's a lot of public facing, and right now with a lot of digital, it's the messaging, social media, how we work on our social media channels and platforms, and also the interviews and the technical side of how we get our messages to the public. So whether that's a form of edutainment, talking with Fountain of Tears, which we just premiered this weekend, we are talking about the influences of the Middle Eastern music in Spanish flamenco, as well as having, Osvaldo Goliov on podcasts and et cetera, and how we get those distribution lines. So it's both the technical side of distribution and the creative side of the content as well.
Yeah, for sure. So at what point do you think we're going to reach saturation of digital media or of live streams in the opera world? Oh, not to put you out of a job, Matthew, but like, are we going to get to a point when it's like, you know what, we have done what we need to do with this art form? Or is there a way that we're going to ensure that this art form, and I do think it's an art form, that it is going to kind of live on in perpetuity?
Yeah, I actually have no qualms about that. We will all find our ways, our pathways to absorb this content. Again, we'll go with opera was one of the first things to be recorded.
Right.
The radio broadcasts have been classical music, have been opera performances. There was one World Series in which they stopped in the middle of an opera to announce the World Series win. So there have always been times of, having that in and out. And so I think actually our technical innovation and distribution systems have always been there. That's the question of, we've got TV now, plays and stage is always under threat. And now we've got internet stage and performances under threat. I think it's just a piece of our humanity that will always need these stories. How we tell the stories and how we receive them is what's the fun part. I do think, we're, with the lockdown and everybody doing that quick pivot to try to figure out how we can keep our audiences engaged. We're now seeing those who really value the yes and of the live performance and the digital performance. And I don't want to say it's a little VHS or beta, but those who are doing the quality broadcasts, it could be who's getting there, but it's also, that doesn't even matter. You could be in the big leagues, in the bigger markets, but there's always going to be minor league baseball as well. So you're always going to have the farm teams as well. So people are still going to need that music out there.
I mean, it's a good parallel, right? Like Met in HD, of course, predated the pandemic by at least a decade, I think.
2006.
2006. Thank you very much. So that's always been around. You look at like ESPN's slate now. There's literally nothing you can't watch on ESPN Plus.
Right.
Right.
Well, the Ocho is the best.
Oh my goodness! Get your popcorn ready. So what's next? Like, how does live streaming?
Well, it's in your title, right? Where's the innovation? What do you see coming next with live streaming or digitizing this art form? I feel like with the pandemic, we had a lot of people a lot of companies experimenting, and some things seem to be sticking, some things maybe not. Where do you see it going forward from your vantage point in this, maybe not quite post-pandemic, but, post-intense pandemic innovation era that we're now in?
Yeah, for me, I think we continue with it. No matter what, opera companies, nonprofit arts industries and institutions, and our supporters, if we had Medici around, that'd be really fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
That we could still support ourselves and take the artistic risks. In addition to new music, which is certainly vital of our artistic expression of humanity, so is taking our risks on the technological side as well.
Right.
There is a little bit of a schism right now of those who are technically proficient in providing this, but not really aware of the subject matter. So that's why it's really fantastic to have operaboxscore. But also when I was working on the Met and HDs, I was doing a lot of post-production, and the post-production crew would have to watch the operas. And they're like, now I have my favorite soprano. Oh, this opera is the best. I love this aria. And doing documentaries, it's the same way. Everybody's learning. So it's the tools that we all have. What are your specialties and those tools? But finding the subject matter interesting and getting that all together. That's really what it is for me is those institutions coming back from lockdown, really understanding that they now have two different avenues of creating their content. Their actual in-person content, which is, I don't want to say basic, but maybe that's how they started. That was their mission of stage performances, as well as the supplemental material or just the production, screen production or content as we're doing right now, this side of it as well. And getting that support, financial support, and from everyone to really work on both.
I mean, of course, the other thing that live streaming provides, for our art form of opera is accessibility, right? So like, let's say a company's doing a site-specific production in a venue that is not ADA compliant. And that's not their fault. That's just like, we need the show to be here. This building was built in 1890, but now with live streaming, accessibility can be addressed.
Yeah, and it's also a fantastic opportunity for democratization of access as well. As you're saying, is whether those are physical barriers, financial barriers, or just geographical barriers. That's the beautiful thing about live streaming, is you're able to take in this work now.
Yeah, I remember when I was much younger. I'm originally from Alabama, not a huge opera scene down there. But I remember how much easier it got to like introduce my friends to opera with just like the advent of like YouTube and like clips that you could just show them, It's so much better than just like, here's a CD of this music you don't understand the context of. But once you have the ability to just go online and see, I almost wonder like if the next step is something like AR, VR.
Well, that's funny that you talked about that, but I absolutely believe that opera is a visual medium. As you said, in school studying vocal performance, I was always listening to CDs. I'm not that interested in listening. I am for a live broadcast to hear the actual breath of this person, to hear them lunge. But a studio recording, I'm not all that interested in. It's about watching how that interaction happens. And what you're saying is spot on for me, is just really the accessibility and being able to work on that. But this weekend, actually, I did have a meeting about how we can actually work in augmented reality and VR, and I actually have been doing that stuff here in Detroit.
Right on. So that's something I was going to ask you. That's something you clearly believe in and you have some skin in the game on.
Yeah, it is about, I think all of it for me is edutainment, but also music appreciation. So when other people can appreciate, if we can give them as much information as possible, what it feels like to be on stage or to be in the opera house, all of those aspects, seeing a documentary, a day in the life of a Piston basketball player going somewhere, or the day in the life of a wardrobe person actually being in the closet and filing through all the different costumes and trying to fit the right ones. All that stuff can be really interesting. But
ouch, Detroit Pistons. That's a very sore subject. Matthew, you, of course, you're a huge New York Mets fan. You got the commemorative cup right here in front of you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As soon as I moved to Detroit, I still kept all my Mets cups that I got from games.
Fantastic. And of course, you also mentioned to me off air, you watch soccer and you watch the Bundesliga in Germany.
Yep. Yeah. I watched that on ESPN Plus, of course. Yeah,
emphasis on the plus for that one, I think.
It's really interesting. I didn't grow up with soccer. My great uncle played for the New York Giants football, and baseball and soccer were not family sports. But I remember watching Euro Cup, and I want to say this was 2004. No, anyway, it was Italy and Spain, and just watching them just all play in concert together, and you're just seeing the different styles of play. I was entranced, and I love Bundesliga, just seeing their different apparatus.
Who's your team in the Bundesliga?
So in Bundesliga 1, it is Borussia Dortmund, but in Bundesliga 2, it is the St. Pauli Piraten, the Pirates of Hamburg.
So cool. So cool. It makes total sense. Gluck's Iphigenie on Tauride stars Wendy Bryn Harmer and William Burden. It's streaming live on Friday, April 21st at 8 p.m. 7 Central on Adagio Concerts. Matthew is going to be there. I hope our listeners are going to be there too. Matthew, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Friends of the show, Amanda Forsyth and Anthony Roth Costanzo in Handel's Amadigi di Gaula, produced in 2022 at Boston Baroque. Hey, who knew Handel wrote so many shows?
It's the
crazy.
fabled sixth Handel opera.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, click follow, Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign, a little bit of sports talk before we get into the 2-minute drill. The Frozen Four, which is college hockey's final tournament, is over. The little college of Quinnipiac in Connecticut wins it all.
Known mostly for their polling.
Connecticut's having a good year, huh?
Having a great year.
Yeah. What is their mascot?
They're
Not Huskies,
I
is
think
it?
they're Cougars. Yeah,
Okay.
I think they're Cougars. Pretty
I
sure.
approve. Yeah.
The other thing you have to go and look for is NBA coach Greg Popovich going off on gun control at a post-game press conference. I'm going to leave it at that. If you know Pop, you know this. He is an outspoken political man as much as he is a fabulous NBA coach. And boy, he went on for just shy of 10 minutes attacking the Tennessee legislature for expelling members of that august body in the wake of the shootings in Tennessee. Try and find that. Right now, you're going to find the 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
As we record on Monday, April 10th, Terrence Blanchard's Champion is making its Metropolitan Opera debut. Toy, toy, toy to the cast and crew, including friend of the show, Ryan Speedo Green. We want a good, clean fight.
Detroit Opera has announced its 23-24 season featuring Madama Butterfly, Missy Mazzoli's Breaking the Waves, Royce Fabrics Breaking the Waves as well, and The Cunning Little Vixen, and John Cage's Europeras 3 and 4.
Bops
Artistic
only.
director Yuval Sharon is dubbing the season Collide and Collage, saying, 3 out of the 4 operas this season are debuts in Detroit. The season offers a sense of collage, different elements coming together and resonating with each other to give a much larger picture of what opera can mean for us now.
The Grand Théâtre de l'Essieu has announced it will co-produce a new Ring cycle with La Monnaie, led by avant-garde Italian director Romeo Castellucci, beginning next season. Artistic director Victor Garcia de Gomar said, quote, Castellucci defines a new way of understanding opera and recodes it by proposing an ethical and aesthetic ceremony reflecting on today's world from this compendium of human emotions such as the tetralogy. Sounds like a real popcorn flick.
San Diego Opera has canceled its performances of Zach Redler and Jerry Dye's The Falling and the Rising, saying, quote, as we navigate the new post-COVID world, with the cost of producing opera skyrocketing and box office revenue down from pre-pandemic levels, the fiscally responsible action is to cancel these performances. Through nimble adaptation to changing environments, we ensure the future of San Diego Opera for our community.
Waltraud Maya is retiring from the stage after a 40-year international career. She performed one of her last concerts in her hometown of Würzburg, in the same concert hall where her career began in 1976. She also announced the creation of a festival dedicated to the works of Jacques Offenbach in Klagenfurt, Austria, where she will be the artistic director.
Waltraud Meyer and Offenbach, two tastes that go so well together. like peas and carrots. In trade news, Mariusz Kvicin has resigned as artistic director at Wrocław Opera after allegations surfaced surrounding his hiring, his conduct in office, and his salary. Kvicin retired from singing in 2020, citing back problems, and was almost immediately appointed to the vacancy at Wrocław. An official investigation has been ordered into some of the allegations, which include a private birthday party at the Opera House.
Yusuf Ayvatsov has been appointed director of the Azerbaijan State Academic Opera and Ballet Theater. Take that, rest of the world.
Brad Cohen is set to become New Zealand Opera's next general director. Said Cohen, I look forward to working with the board and staff and strengthening our connection with communities and audiences, growing our opera ecosystem, celebrating our history, and playing our part in creating a sustainable future for opera in New Zealand.
On the disabled list, Angela Garrigue. American fans will have to keep waiting for her return to the Met. The Romanian soprano was forced to withdraw from her performances of Tosca, including the radio broadcast, after testing positive for COVID-19. Soprano Ludmila Monostroyska jumped into the titular role in her stead.
Michelle Bradley has withdrawn from the Met's upcoming production of Aida for personal reasons. Angela Meade and Lea Cucetta will each sing the role for performances in April and May.
Exit stage right, conductor Konstantin Starovitsky has died in Ukraine on the front line of the Russian invasion. He graduated from Ukraine's National Music Academy, was a bassoonist in the National Academic Brass Orchestra, and went on to conduct at the Kyiv Opera. Since the invasion, he has served as a senior rifleman defending the Brovary district in Kharkiv Oblast. The National Philharmonic of Ukraine wrote about his death. A musician, conductor, father, and son was killed in the war. A hero, Konstantin Starovitsky.
And on this day, April 10th, the premieres were, in 1725, Attila Oriosti's Dario in London. In 1840, Gaetano Donizetti's Les Martyrs in Paris. In 1868, Brahms's A German Requiem, not quite an opera, but we always love our operatic soloists doing the baritone and soprano solos. That was in Bremen on Good Friday in 1868. And in 1886, Emmanuel Chabrier's Gwendoline premiered in Brussels. Also in 1913, the first performance of Montemezzi's L'amore dei tre re at La Scala, with Tullio Serafin conducting. Birthdays on this day, April 10th, include Italian conductor and composer Victor de Sabata, Peruvian tenor Luigi Alva, born in Lima in 1927, American tenor Kenneth Regal in Pennsylvania, and on this day, April 10th, in 1955, English soprano Leslie Garrett was born.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
Some tough competition from the birthday boys and girls, but we had to go with the retiring Grand Dame Waltraud Meyer.
Lover of Offenbach.
Lover of Offenbach.
What she's most known for.
And featured here in a clip from a production of Lohengrin at Baden-Baden in 2006 with Kent Nagano conducting. This is the Ortrud and Weiter Goethe invocation scene. Waltraud Meyer is such an electric singer. She's done both dramatic mezzo and dramatic soprano roles. She was a really notable Isolde throughout her career. She's on the video recording of one of the first French 5-act Don Carlo recordings as well, with Nagano conducting. Just really a force to be reckoned with, and someone who will be greatly missed.
Huge stage presence. Just an amazing performer.
Would you call her a soprano falcone?
Probably.
Or
I mean,
more of a Svishen,
kind of
dramatic Svishen Fach, you know?
Yeah, her voice definitely sits on the lower side, but some of those big dramatic roles just don't require you to sit up at the top of the staff quite in a way that is congenial for her voice. So she can pop off those high notes, but she definitely doesn't want to sit up there all day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, she had a big career at the Met, which is, of course, in the news this week. As we already said, friend of the show, Ryan Speedo Green, right now is shirtless in front of 3,000 people after all those workouts.
When I was doing research for the 2-minute drill, I always do a little bit of Googling. And I was having trouble finding anything because every single story is about Champion right now. And I think with good reason. Obviously, Terrence Blanchard returning to the Met. The production looks really cool. I've been seeing a couple clips here and there.
Yeah.
And just like the absolute commitment of everyone to this. I think Ryan Speedo Green, he worked out, and he's like lost
Yeah.
60 pounds.
Worked out is an understatement.
That's an understatement. Okay, so
He is jacked for
Dude,
this
okay.
role. You know?
I was gonna save this for my good call. I can't wait any longer. Sorry, Cummings. I'm gonna steal your fire.
It's kind of a communal.
There's an article.
Give me a good call.
First of all, there's an article on ESPN.com about this production. So you already know that you've made the big time when your stuff is on ESPN.com.
When do you think is the last time they wrote about opera?
Yeah, I'm going to try never. So the other thing is, it says that Speedo, he lost 60 pounds to do this show. Okay, so that's almost half my body weight, first of all. And second of all,
I mean,
like...
After you shaved, especially.
I wouldn't know where to begin to try and lose 60 pounds.
Well, my question is like, I mean, I would be nervous to see what that would do to my voice. Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of losing 60 pounds, but just such a huge difference to not have the same, knowledge of your instrument, on a basic level is really intimidating to me,
Fair.
Well, I just wanted to add that it's interesting because Champion is coming to Lyric Opera next year.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of Terence Blanchard in the span of just a couple of years from both the Met and from Lyric. And one would say, I learned this from Anthony Freud, that the reason why they were able to turn it around really quickly and get Blanchard back on the season projections was because of COVID, because of all the reshuffling that had to happen during the shutdown. Some things that were in the works for maybe season 21, season 22 that they canceled allowed a piece like Champion to come up the pipeline faster because it was already ready. Since it already premiered, I forget where, Champion from Minnesota or something like that.
I think it premiered at St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, good for Terence Blanchard. He's having a moment, and great for Ryan Speedo Green, who is really the poster child for this Met season. You're about to say, Matt, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I think it's also interesting just that a lot of the press coverage of this opera talks about what it's like to be able to still have Terence Blanchard there, making adjustments that'll make it more congenial to a big space like the Met or like Lyric Opera after it was, composed as a little bit more of a chamber opera, and really down to the list where he can even rewrite vocal lines for like Ryan Speedo Green or Latonia Moore, who just are not able to make the same kind of dramatic impact with the piece as it had existed in its earlier iterations. He can there's an anecdote in one of the Time stories where Latonia Moore's like, "Hey, can you rewrite this?" And he just like jots it down and sends it over to her, and she and like on the spot they just change the score.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff they used to do all the time back in the 19th century, right? Gone are the days where you had to have a Paris version with a ballet for your opera. But I do think it is exciting to see this level of collaboration again on such a big stage as the Met. I do think this is, an advantage that I'd like to see more of on large scale houses throughout the U.S. and elsewhere.
So just last week we were talking about we weren't talking about Angela. We were talking about Sonia Yoncheva last week about her cancellation. Earlier
These
in the
Iron
week,
Curtain sopranos are just
earlier in the week we had this sort of insane article from Zachary Wolf about Angela Georgiou and all of her antics and maybe her broken relationship with Peter Gelb. She was much more of a...
It felt like a flashback to 2013, when all of these stories were written the last time.
Yeah, and like her marriage to Alanya and how they were ridiculous and how she like rejected a wig and like all this stuff, But she made it sound like, she has been wanting to come back to the Met, and Peter Gelb, it's been him who's like been preventing her. And then wouldn't you know it, she gets 2 performances of Tosca, one of them a radio broadcast, so really wide reach. And they were talking about how she was in rehearsal, like not following stage direction, inventing the blocking as she went along. And then she went and she got COVID. And like, I don't even know how to feel about that. It's like, that sucks because I actually wanted to hear it. I wonder what she sounds like.
It's just anticlimactic.
Me too.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to hear what she sounds like 10 years later.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I'm also desperate to hear this Detroit season. Are you kidding me?
This is crazy.
This is a wild season. When was the last time your operas 3 and 4 were presented anywhere in the world?
Okay, so I'm searching on Opera Base, and all I'm getting is sorry. no performances exist.
I think I know it's performed at least one time when Cage was around and doing it, but I believe I have a recording. It literally is a collage.
Of course
You do.
Yeah, but like, I will say it's on the weirder side, as you would expect from John Cage. But it's kind of also interesting to hear a John Cage take on opera. But even beyond that, like we've got a pretty solid. Everything else is pretty solid too. I love Breaking the Waves. It's a really neat opera. I still feel cheated that that COVID took it away from us here in Chicago. And Cunning Little Vixen is also one of my favorites. Yuval Sharon is going to conduct it, so it's probably going to be out of order.
A big year for Janacek next season.
Yeah, really. Even The Butterfly is going to be pretty good. You got Matthew Ozawa directing. You've got an Asian American team for that, which with Kensho Watanabe conducting, which is really the only way I think we can do Butterfly at this point in time.
It seems like from the press about it, they're trying to create like a sensitive to Asian culture Butterfly.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're taking this seriously. Great message to send. Honestly, no notes.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that this might be the season that I finally make it out there to the Motor City, because this is a really cool season. I'm really excited about
just
it.
A quick retraction on the Janacek. Yuval Sharon is not conducting it; he's directing it. Roberto Colby will be conducting that.
That'd be interesting if he was
I was
conducting.
like, what doesn't that guy do?
He can't be
He's
stopped.
everywhere.
He can't be the triple threat like Mariusz Kavicin, Barahunk, Baritone, and Party Goer or something. I don't know. So there's a really strange article from a Polish news source that, when you translate it in the Google Translate, it's not really clear exactly what happened. So we'll follow up.
Google Translate does not speak fluent Polish.
No.
We'll follow up on this story as we learn more. But apparently he was asked to resign from his post at Opera Wrocław. Because of, maybe misusing his power, maybe throwing himself a birthday party. I don't know if he was doing something. I mean, it feels like, okay, that's bad, but it's not like a fireable offense, But it sounds like there might be more to the story that we haven't quite heard yet.
Some like financial irregularities.
Some
maybe?
contract shenanigans, potentially. It's very unclear. We wouldn't want to cast aspersions incorrectly.
We don't deal in conjecture.
Any of our listeners who can speak Polish, please look it up and let us know what's going on.
operaboxscore@gmail.com. Here's what I don't understand. So San Diego Opera cancels performances of this opera, The Falling and the Rising, which is the music's by Zach Redler, the libretto's by Jerry Dye. Full disclosure, I've directed this opera. I know these two people, all right? It's a great piece. It has been around for a number of years. It is about a female American soldier who survives a improvised explosive device attack and her sort of struggle to deal with post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's a great, tight opera. I don't understand two things. First of all, I don't know why Jerry Dye's name isn't on the poster on the San Diego Opera website. That is unconscionable in this day and age to not put the librettist on the poster, right? Mark Campbell, you don't forget to put his name out there. Second of all, I don't get why it's fiscally responsible to cancel this opera and then to say to ticket holders, give us a call and we'll let you know how the money you've spent on your tickets can be transferred to another show. Like, that doesn't add up for me. You right? So it's basic. Is it a bait and switch? It's a very pricey one if that's what it is.
I mean, it's very strange. I mean, anytime like a big cancellation happens like this, I always feel like there's something going on in the background that we don't know about. I don't think I ever hear about a kind of a not really not super last minute, but like I never hear about a big cancellation of an entire production like this where I felt like I've known from the press release what exactly is going on. I suspect that there's a lot of financial problems behind the scenes. Maybe there was, especially with a new opera, maybe there was some contract issues where someone asked for more money because, they can, because it's not a, dead composer who can't ask for more. It could be a number of things. I do agree with you. It's pretty extreme to cancel and just shift the tickets like that. But
they're just coming off a production of Tosca, and then in mid-April there's 3 performances of a new opera called Ghost. So folks out there in Operaland, tell me what I'm missing. Why are these numbers not adding up to me? What am I getting wrong here? Because it makes no sense.
We've already reached out to our Polish listeners, so if you're an accountant, you can let us know about this one.
Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call to wrap up this week's episode. Well, we're going to go with the person who has appeared least recently, Matt Cummings.
I mean, aside from my good call just being back with You Fine Gentlemen.
Oh, yeah, go on.
We already touched a little bit on my good call, which is this incredible feature from ESPN about opera, which really deserves extra props for being the first thing I read today that wasn't about last night's episode of Succession. That could hold my attention. No spoilers.
Weston Williams.
I have 2 bad calls. One was on Easter. I attempted to buy Cadbury cream egg, and it was almost $2. So eggflation has really hit the chocolate bird market as well. My other bad call is that it's very difficult. As some of my listeners might know, I am planning a wedding soon, and I have access to a solo violinist, and it's very difficult to arrange.
Samstag am Licht with the solo violin.
Yeah, it's a little hard, and it's such a long piece too for the procession. You have to go in slow motion, or maybe I could do like kind of a Robert Wilson thing, like with Einstein on the Beach, where I go forwards and backwards. I'm still working on it, but I want it to be as avant-garde as possible.
How are you getting Sequenza 3 into your recessional?
That's gonna be the first dance tune, our first dance that we dance to. So it's gonna be beautiful.
Oliver Camacho.
Well, you missed the perfect seg that Matt set up for us, but I'm just obsessed with Succession right now, and I've been listening to all the podcasts, like the pre-cap and the recap, and I've even been going back and watching old episodes because it's so good. And last night's episode was so heartbreaking. So I'm proposing Succession the opera, and we could go ahead and start casting season 1 for season 1 of Succession the opera. So it'll be like The Ring. We'll get 4 of them. I say Ferruccio Furlanetto as Logan Roy. As Marcia Roy, Angela Georgiou, if she doesn't cancel. And as Roman Roy, I say friend of the show, Theo Hoffman. They're about the same size. And, they have that sort of not the word squirrely, but what did we call him? Gamine? Like, somebody who's like small and youthful looking, who's a man.
George Cedarquist.
No. We had a word. I'll think of the word. Anyway, still need to cast Kendall and Shiv and Tom Wamsgams and Cousin Greg.
If it were 20 years ago, Matthew Polenzani would be a great Tom Wamsgams.
Yes,
that Midwestern nice.
Good call here to Tapestry Opera in Canada. This is one of my favorite Canadian opera companies. They've just closed a run of an opera called Of the Sea. It was written by Black playwright Kanika Ambrose, music by Matee and French-Canadian musician Ian Cusson, directed by the award-winning Black cultural leader, director, and actor Philip Aiken, and features for the first time, actually, in a large-scale Canadian opera, an all-Black cast. What a triumph for this company that goes from strength to strength. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. That was the word you were looking for. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, send us that voice memo or just email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. Find links to stuff we've talked about at our website and in the show notes, operaboxscore.com. And that's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. On that website, you can give back to the OBS on the donate page. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is Weston Williams. For co-host Matt Cummings and our guest, Matthew Principe, I'm George Cedarquist. asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you lose 60 pounds for the opportunity to punch a tenor in the face. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you're going to get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more private birthday parties. Join us.